Hello everyone, thank you for joining us in this edition of The Insight. I am Bable Jonathan in Cameroon's economic captain. Douala. In this edition of the program will be talking about ills, violation of the law and human rights, violence on the rise in the Republic of Cameroon, and killings recorded in different parts of the country, including the crisis-stricken northwest and southwest regions of the country. Amidst all these, many Cameroonians, especially youth, remain inactive, passive, silent, while the few who are taking front stage to speak out against the ills in the country are braving threats, arbitrary arrest, detention, torture, and even death. And in some of the recent incidents recorded in the country, at least 6 persons from the same family were killed in Nangai-Boko in the central region of the country, and the suspected killer is said to have committed suicide in detention. Other love relationship related deaths have also been recorded in different parts of the country, including the littoral west and even the southwest regions of the country. And in one of the recent cases of extreme violence, several vehicles were set ablaze in my 16 in Boya southwest region of the country within the context of the more than 6-year-long armed conflict going on there, and the vehicles were set ablaze. The occupants are attacked for not respecting Operation Ghost Town imposed by pro-independence fighters in the 2 English-speaking regions of the country. And talking about violations of human rights, victims of violations of human rights, arbitrary arrest, detention, torture are still in jail in their hundreds, thousands in the Republic of Cameroon, and some of them are arrested and detained in connection to the armed conflict in the northwest and southwest regions of the country, others in connection to opposition political party activities like militants of the Cameroon Renaissance Movement, CRM political party. And concerning the violation of the law, a case in point, it concerns board chairpersons of state companies and parastatals in the Republic of Cameroon, over 41 of them who are functioning in illegality, and about 7 who are about to join the train of illegality by July 12, 2023, if the head of state does not appoint, because he is the one in charge of appointing them. And we're going to be looking at these issues in this edition of The Insight. Meet our guest in some few seconds. Our guest today is Silvanus Mutaga Tifu. Is one of the special advisors to the national president of the Cameroon Renaissance Movement, CRM political party. He is one of the young, courageous, and outspoken politicians in the Republic of Cameroon. Mutaga, you're welcome to the program.
Thank you a lot, Mr. Babila Jonathan, for this honor you've granted me today to be on set. I want to use this opportunity to thank the people of Kruku village in the Batibo subdivision of the northwest region of Cameroon, who mobilized about 3 million francs to ensure that they give a roof over the primary school of that village that a dangerous wind blew off some 3 weeks ago.
Right now, let's begin with the rising violence in the Cameroonian society after the killing of at least 6 persons from the same family in Nangai-Boko, and of course reports that the suspected killer committed suicide in detention. Other love relationship deaths have been recorded in different parts of the country, here in the littoral, in the west, and even in the southwest regions of the country. What is your analysis of this rising violence in the Cameroonian society?
Mr. Babila Jonathan, the very first analysis is that it is becoming rampant. That's the very first remark that I want to point out, is that the violence, domestic violence, you will call it domestic violence, because most often you see that it is as a result of a tussle between the husband and the wife, and then finally the wife ends up dying, and maybe sometimes the children too die, like the case you just mentioned in Nangai-Boko. And then you look at the other case in the northern region where a man killed the wife. That's a secondary school teacher in one of the government secondary schools. So you find out that we are in the 21st century, that many people are prone to many different social media outlets, and they tend to copy bad behavior. You know, the more we watch movies that have to prone violence and all the like, you see that people are very vulnerable to it. If you go to a republic like China, you understand that the number of hours even that a person has to spend on watching movies, maybe on social media and all the like, it is regulated, and then the kind of movie that is watched is highly censored. So if you look in our country, you find that with the issue of liberalism and all the like, people are free to watch whatever they want to watch. And then another thing with remark is that you find that our clergymen, those who are supposed to be the crusaders of peace and the imams and all the like, we might think that they are failing in the execution of their duty, because the world has been made in such a way that we tend to think that it is only power that has to resolve maybe issues that happen within the house. People tend not to value human life in the homes, and this is as a result of the fact that the church is failing. It's the fact that the mosque is failing. It's as a result of that our traditional rulers also are failing, because I remember in the years past, when there used to be a domestic violence case and you are taken over to the chief, you will be fined to pay maybe 7 goats, 10 goats, and maybe sometimes if your case is so extreme, you could be placed on exile. Nowadays, there's human right, and they tell you that no, this cannot be done and all the like, and the whole thing becomes complicated. So,
but when a man takes up upon himself to kill 6 persons, when a man takes up upon himself to beat his wife to death, to kill the children, what can possibly explain that kind of extremist reaction to situations? Because they are generating from some of the situations between the husband and the wife at home and things like that.
Mr. Babla Jonathan, it is prohibited even in the Bible. The Bible prohibits it to take away the life of somebody, and even the Quran prohibits it. So if you look at what happened in Nanga Eboko, I asked myself this particular question: were the neighbors not around? Because honestly speaking, in a big compound like that, before they killed one person, then go to the next person, there would have been noise of lamentation that would awaken maybe the conscience of the neighbors to understand that the lives of the occupants of that particular compound, their lives are in danger. So it boils down to the fact that we Cameroonians at times, maybe with the increasing insecurity that is so rampant in our nation, you find that people tend to be very skeptical, maybe in intervening in what happens, especially in the houses of their neighbors and all the like. Because if you look at what happened in Nanga Eboko, I wouldn't say that that person committed the crime without at least any traces of noise filtering into the neighbors' houses and all the like. They could have heard the noise and were very skeptical to intervene. You know the case in Cameroon that at times you have been let me say your house is violated by thieves and all the like. You call the police officers at times to come there. The police officer might not have even the necessary weapons. They might not have the necessary logistics to come to intervene in that case. We may ask ourselves questions: are you quite sure that there isn't any of the occupants of that house that tried even to call the police or to call any other forces of law in order to come, and there was a delay? And then if that was not done, the mere fact that the person who killed that person was arrested and then placed in a cell at the judicial police in Yaoundé, and the person died, it becomes very suspicious and then difficult for us to understand or to prompt into investigation to really find out the motives that really caused him to kill that person. So there is something fidgeting. So,
and there are a lot of questions around what we're hearing from the judicial police sources about the death of a suspected killer. It is said that he killed himself in the toilet using a rope from his trouser, which he committed suicide, which he used to commit suicide. And there's still a lot of questions around that.
Mr. Babala Jonathan, if I can recount or record exactly what happened with the political prisoners of the CROM in 2019, and even after our arrest and detention at the special police branch in Yaoundé, they call the GSO, I think there was strict surveillance over us. Every time you wanted to go to the toilet, there was at least a security officer that would follow you, and sometimes you were chained. You were handcuffed. You were handcuffed with another with another detainee, so that the two of you go there. You find that it was a real violation of the rights of the political prisoner. While you are on the toilet dish, you are up. Another prisoner will be up watching you. So now, looking at the case of this guy, that is a very notorious criminal, because a criminal that killed up to 6 persons, there would have been an eye on him. They would have watched over him to ensure that he is kept in safe hands, so that they could probe into investigation. Through the case of this gentleman, it could have permitted us to really understand what would have been the prime motive for a guy of his nature, 32 years of age, killing up to 6 members of his family. That wasn't done. So, like I would say, you find that it might also go to the point of us asserting that presently there's a lot of occultic practices that are occurring in our nations. Could this gentleman have been part of a secret cult that asked him, okay, you have to kill up to this number of members of your family so that you would tend to amass this wealth and other like, Today, the rush of people after money, to make money, pushes them to get themselves entangled with a lot of terrible things that are done in the society today, right up to the killing of your own blood and sisters, brothers, and even family members.
And there was an issue of a breakup that didn't go well, and there have been such cases in our society today in several parts of the country where people get to the point of killing another simply because of a breakup, simply because of a disappointment, simply because of a misbehavior or a misunderstanding. What can we say about such actions that result from things that could be solved otherwise?
Mr. Babala Jonathan, it is as a result of the lack of trust in God. That's the very first thing. Because the Bible tells us that you shouldn't love anything on earth here more than the love you have for God. If your love for God exceeds the love you have for other things on earth here, I'm quite sure there is not any one thing on earth here that will push you to kill someone because of that thing. Once you are married in the house, you should understand that your wife is not an angel. Your husband is not an angel. There are errors that your wife will commit. There are errors that your husband will commit. So love is supposed to have that aspect of tolerance. We should tolerate. Whosoever say he loves has to tolerate certain excesses of his spouse. You should tolerate those excesses. So it is as a result of the fact that many people are not cultured, they are not reading the gospel. That's why I say that. And then you find that society nowadays, people tend to look at Christians or maybe churches as places where they are money-making places. Our pastors, our clergymen, and all the like should be blamed because the mere fact that most pastors and evangelists and all the like have turned to to value money more than preaching the gospel is scaring away many souls that ought to have been won for Christ and all the like. You understand what I'm saying? And this is the reason why you see that we still have a lot of persons who are untamed, because the word of God is the only thing that can tame a man in the society and makes him value the life of another person like that is created by God and in the image of God.
Well, it was already prophesied a long time ago that there was going to be a time when there will be false prophets around, there will be false preachings around, and all of that is what we are living today. And now, apart from these violent cases in the homes, even in the society today, it is very frequent insult, violent reactions. Over 50 francs, a client and a bike rider are quarreling and they get into fighting, and sometimes it even degenerates to somebody being wounded and so on. And these are things that we're living today on a daily basis in our society today, and some are attributing this to frustrations of life, to poverty, even mental poverty, intellectual poverty, moral poverty, and so on.
Yes, Mr. Babula Jonathan, with the rising, the increasing trend of poverty in the Cameroonian society, the unbearable living conditions that some Cameroonians are subjected to because of social injustice and other like, I think that some might be tempted to express that frustration in a very brutal way. But then, like I said, it's not normal for us to legalize such evil in our community. And I think that this is so rampant as a result of the fact that those who are in power, they tend to neglect the duties of certain components of the society, like the psychiatrists, you have the sociologists, you have even the political scientists and other like. These are the people that are the doctors of the society. I once heard a state minister said of what importance is it to be studying sociology in school, of what importance is it to be studying maybe history and other like. You can find that in a society where these people who are supposed to be the doctors that cure psychological issues in that society, they are being neglected. You understand that there is bound to be a lot of rising misbehavior in the society. So if you look at what is happening in Cameroon today, where there is insult, there are physical aggressions and other like, you find that our law courts are failing, because there are portions of our law that says if you insult somebody verbally and you are that the person sue you in a court, you have to be made to pay for it. So I think that the courts have to start acting. They have to be doing their duty. And then another thing is that the state itself, you find that is the primary perpetrator of some of the violations that are noticeable in the Cameroonian society, and then the ordinary person tends to copy that from it. You can imagine in a society where police officers who are supposed to be those who are supposed to teach the ordinary citizens how they are supposed to behave, and then if they see a police officer misbehaving, or they see a gendarme misbehaving, or they see a soldier misbehaving, you find that the ordinary citizens tend to copy that from them, and then think that whenever there is a situation, you have to handle it the way you need to handle it, because they no longer trust anyone.
And there's been a general outcry over what is qualified as the reign of impunity in the Republic of Cameroon, and one of those speaking against this at the level of the international level is Tibor Nash, who is the former U.S. Secretary of State for Africa, and he is condemning the fact that a journalist, a reporter, has been threatened by a local administrative official, a mayor in the northern regions, the far north region of the country, for investigating corruption, being threatened. Now, let's talk about violence in the context of the Anglophone crisis. The most recent incident happened in mile 16 in Boya, where several cars were set ablaze, and this resulted from the fact that the owners of the cars, who were also attacked and pursued by the persons who set the vehicles ablaze, did not respect Operation Ghost Town, an operation imposed by pro-independence fighters in the two English-speaking regions of the country, and this has been prevailing for more than 6 years today. What's your understanding of this?
My very first reaction is that I condemn in total what happened, the setting ablaze of those cars. I think it's a violation of human rights. But then we are talking of the northwest and southwest region that is a no-go area, especially for some other political actors like myself. Though we hear from that part of the region, you can imagine that for over since 2016, the only political party that has been carrying on its activities in the northwest and southwest region is the CPDM. You saw them won elections there in 2018, and just of recent they won the municipal and parliamentary elections in 2020, and they won the senatorial elections. Now we begin to ask ourselves whether those boys who are perpetrating chaos in the northwest and southwest regions are loyalists to the regime in place. What is it that really permits them to operate so freely in the northwest and southwest region that other political parties of the opposition are unable to do so? So I think that the war going on in the northwest and southwest region is acting in favor of the ruling CPDM in place. So it's in their interest to keep the war on right to their kingdom come, and perhaps as a means maybe to conserve power as long as they can do, because they know.
But they have been saying that they are doing everything,
if they are
doing peace and so on, for things to return to normalcy. But the question here is, when people are attacked, vehicles burned, and the situation is said to be under control, does that speak of a situation that is under control right in the heart of Boya, in a town like Boya, where there have been some relative stability somehow?
It's a lie from the pit of hell, Mr. Babula Jonathan, to say the situation is under control. In as much as we admit that there are little advancements that have been done so far, maybe the special status that has been granted to the northwest and southwest region after the monologue that took place in Yaoundé in 2019.
Which many say there is nothing special in the special status.
That is... It's regrettable, because those who are vying for the special status, who attended the dialogue, are the ones complaining again that there isn't something special in the special status. But then on paper, the international community and other persons are fanfaring it, they are funding it, that there is a special status that has been granted. Like I said, if you look at exactly what is happening in the northwest and southwest region, you find that the ordinary citizen is caught between the devil and the Red Sea. Who is the devil at this particular point? The devil is... it is a separate, how can I call it, those
the civilians who carry guns.
the unarmed, that's the armed gunmen, the non-state armed gunmen that are carrying guns. Those, they call them the Amber Boys and other, like if at all they are the ones perpetrating the chaos. And then now when you come now, the Red Sea is the government in place that imposes on the ordinary civilians to open their market places, their shops, and maybe to run the streets with motorbikes, with cars and other like, on days that the separatists have imposed a ghost town. And then sometimes they even go right up to imposing meting sanctions on those who did not open their shops, or those who, or the taxi men that did not place their cars on in the streets. So you find that it is regrettable that the regime is talking of peace in the northwest and southwest region, without they don't take into consideration, especially the risks in which they are exposing the ordinary citizens to. And there isn't any peace. There is no security in the northwest and southwest region. Presently, as I'm telling you like this, I have one of my brother's wife that is lying sick in one of the hospitals in Kumba. There was, during one of the sporadic gunshots in the southwest region, she was shot and she's lying down in the hospital. You can imagine it. A woman. They were shooting just randomly and a bullet picked her at the hip. I'm quite sure we will be spending not less than £1 million to see that we can rescue the leg. So the situation in the northwest and southwest region is not under control. And if the government in place keeps on deceiving the international community, and the international community wants to buy their lies, I will tell you that the whole world is a corrupt place. Of recent, we heard of the United States of America about to lift off the sanction that they gave on Cameroon. That's the AGUA. We ask ourselves, have they carried out investigations to ensure that the human rights violations in which they said they were sanctioning the Republic of Cameroon based on violations of human rights, has there been any improvement? Because the Donald Trump government placed Cameroon on a ban not to be a beneficiary of the AGOA.
No, when we look at what is happening on the ground, and it's a kind of a situation where it is often said that when elephants are fighting, the grass will be suffering. So, is the issue of ghost town, fighting, pursuing people left and right, killing soldiers, going after separatists, tracking them down, killing them, exposing their mortal remains on the streets, and all the military force that is deployed in those two regions, all of that, is it yielding any fruit? Is it helping the situation?
Mr. Babla Jonathan, I am one of those persons who said the heroism that is always being portrayed maybe by the regular soldiers, that's the army, that is there to ensure security, is not something that is very normal. I saw when Oliver Lieke, the so-called alias Field Marshal, was being killed in Kumba. His body was displayed in the street. It was like a heroic something. And then you find that the separatists have taken that too as a way that whenever they killed a soldier, they would have to expose the body, and then sometimes you see the head being cut and they make a kind of fun and a heroic display of the whole thing. This is not normal. It is not respecting the rule of wars. And I think that
are all those actions helping the situation?
The actions are not helping. That's why I say that they are instead helping to revolt. They are helping to banalize. That's wickedness, cynicism. You see that when we are talking of today that there is no more valuing of human lives in our country and all the like, it is as a result of the fact that even those who are supposed to show some value to that human life are not showing that value. Normally when a person is being killed, whether it's a separatist that is being killed by our regular soldiers, they are not supposed to display the body and make it as a kind of heroic something. It's a human being that has been killed. It is regrettable that that is happening.
All right, Silvanus Mutaga, I want us to go to the newsstands now, and we're going to take a look at what the newspapers reported this week in Cameroon. The press review. Cameroon Tribune raises an alarm on recurrent medical errors in hospitals in Cameroon. The National Daily says medical error-related deaths must stop. The Guardian Post is concerned about the silence of the Cameroon government as Nigerian herdsmen raid border villages in the northwest and southwest regions. Another issue of the paper reports that the steering committee of the presidential plan for the reconstruction and development of the northwest and southwest regions has adopted a new strategy to fast-track the execution of earmarked projects. The strategy is qualified by Municipal Update as a new development blueprint. The Horizon highlights how the special status should be rebranded to meet the aspirations of the people of the northwest and southwest regions. In the median, Senate President Marcel Nyat Njifendi is reported to have said because of ill health, the Secretary General of the Senate should stay home and rest while receiving his pay and other advantages. Cameroon Tribune looks at the new challenges on the shoulders of recently elected and appointed senators already on duty. The Guardian Post exclaims over the growing trend of father-to-son succession at the helm of African countries. Newswatch says the Douala Port Authority's Wood Terminal will generate 53 billion francs CFA after the construction of a new and multipurpose quay at the terminal. On the front page of the Guardian Post Sports, the Cameroon Football Federation FECAFOOT condemns racial abuse and death threats on Lions defender Malcolm Bokele in France. You're welcome back. Silvanus Mutaga, the Guardian Post newspaper, exclaims over government's silence as Nigerian herdsmen raid communities along the border with Nigeria, notably in the northwest and southwest regions of the country.
It's regrettable that the government has remained so silent with regards to the kidnapping, I think, of about 7, I'm quite sure, 7 persons by the Nigerian headmen. That's what we heard. And this is just an indicator of the fact that they are confused. The regime in place is confused, honestly confused. And not just confused, because they don't know exactly where they can get maybe experts, or they can get help. They are confused simply because they have always remained with that pride that they can handle everything that is happening in this nation. That's the more reason you see that most often, even with ministerial appointments and other, like the head of state will always like to appoint only those who are loyal to him, and he will not want to get those who are having divergent ideas, especially contrary to the regime in place. Because I think that...
And in public opinion today, in public discussions today, there is a general impression that the Cameroonian authorities are not very much concerned with the well-being of Cameroonians who are attacked by foreign nationals, who are attacked in other countries, who are maltreated in other countries, even though we have seen situations where action has been taken to repatriate, to bring back home the Cameroonians. But there is this general impression that the Cameroon government is not very proactive, is not very active in terms of protecting the interests of Cameroonians in the face of foreign nationals or in foreign countries.
That assertion is quite very correct, Mr. Babla Jonathan, because if we look at the present situation of our nation, even with regards to having just the national identity card, you find that it's regrettable to say this. We have foreigners that can brandish a national identity card on the street to a Cameroonian who is not even having that national identity card, and you ask the person how did he or she manage to get in possession of such a very valuable document, which the real bona fide sons and daughters of Cameroon run for it over 3-6 years, and they're unable to have it. Now, when you look at exactly what is happening with our brothers and sisters who are caught maybe in very dangerous situations in other countries, you understand that they have those who were frustrated. They were being frustrated with the way the country is being governed, and the system in place. When they hear that they are outside and they are caught in that kind of a situation, I want to say that the mere fact that they don't rush to rescue them, it seems to say they I don't know whether they tend to say, okay, who even sent you to get yourself involved in such a situation? But then we can laud the efforts of some individuals. I heard one time when you interviewed the Cameroon ambassador's consulate in
the Consulate General of Cameroon in Lagos.
In Lagos, Nigeria. I think that there are certain exceptions who are really doing their job well. When I say doing their job well, at least they portray such empathy and sympathy for their fellow citizens, even if they don't have the available means maybe to rescue them. What we want our government to do is to begin to understand that most of these youths who are running out of the nations, they never wanted just to get out of the nation one day. It's as a result of the fact that there is a lot of social injustice in this country, and that social injustice can be explained. If you look at the majority of those who are gainfully employed, especially in civil service in our nation, you find that some of them who are still occupying posts of responsibility and other like, they are long past the age. So the youths, when they still see this octogenarian occupying this post, they seem to feel that they no longer have a future, and then the only best alternative for them to do is to go out of the nation. After all, some of them say a step in the wrong direction is better than a standstill. But then it's something we of the opposition we discourage.
But it is always very important to take the right step in the right direction, as the Consul General of Cameroon to Nigeria said to us in Lagos in that interview which you mentioned earlier, telling Cameroonians not to get into illegal situations, get into another country in illegality without going through the right procedure is very much discouraged, and should not be the situation of Cameroonians who are always finding themselves in such situations, especially in the quest for greener pastures. Now, coming back to the issue of a violation of human rights in the Republic of Cameroon, there are still many Cameroonians who were arrested and are being detained according to legal minds, illegally, arbitrary, in connection to the Anglophone crisis. There are still many militants of the CRM political party who are still in detention today, referred to as political prisoners. What can possibly explain this violation of human rights, this violation of the law?
Mr. Babula Jonathan, the very first thing we have to understand is that our justice system is not free. Within the context of separation of power, it is still under the heavy hand of the executive. If you look at what is happening today, especially with the militants of the CRM that are in prison since 2020, you will understand that they are still there against the recommendations of the United Nations. They are still there against maybe the recommendations of legal minds of goodwill in this nation. And this is simply due to the fact that our law department, the justice system is not all that free, because most of these lawyers, most of the magistrates, I will tell you that sometimes you meet them one-on-one and they tell you that we know that these persons are in the prisons unjustly, but you should understand that we have pressure to keep them in prisons.
Pressure from who?
Pressure from who? That's the question. Pressure from the executive arm of government. Pressure from those who think that you should keep these guys in prison as long as possible, especially militants of the CRM, so that the CRM can be weakened, so that the CRM can go violent and they try to see if they can dissolve the CRM political party. It's regrettable because we are talking of Cameroon as a democracy, and this is not really what ought to have been on the ground, but it is happening. Professor Alain Fogetedom, who is at the Konding Central Prison, you understand exactly what happened. On the eve of the municipal and parliamentary elections, some rascals who were being they were called as militants of the CPDM, went to Professor Maurice Kamto's house in Yaoundé. As we were told, a good number of them, they wanted to molest him, they wanted to force their way into his compound and maybe kill him. That's how we were told. And militants of the CRM who heard about it rallied up, went to his compound in Yaoundé to see that they ensure his security. When Professor Alain Fogo heard that there was a tussle there, he had to leave his compound, went there to see how he could maybe settle the matter amicably, talk to our militants to calm down, and even try to get in touch with the forces of law and order. But what did he receive as his payment? Arrest and dumped at the Konding Central Prison. We'll take the case of Bibu Nusak that was arrested in his residence. They came and picked him up. He was with his wife in his house, even though he's part of those who called for the manifestation, but he was not yet at the manifestation ground. You know what I'm saying? He was picked there, dumped at the Konding Central Prison. We take the case of Mr. Zambwe Pascal. Mr. Zambwe Pascal, who is the national secretary in charge of organization of the party and inspection, he was picked in Douala a week, 2 weeks later by security agents and then transported to Yaoundé and dumped at the Konding Central Prison. All of them were judged at the military court, sentenced to 7 years imprisonment. If you ask them, what crime are they guilty of? The only crime is that they stood up and said, no, elections could not be organized in the northwest and southwest region, or municipal and parliamentary elections cannot be organized in this country when the northwest and southwest region is still at war, because those elections are local elections that demand for absolute, if not comparative security. Because
what about the crimes that what about the crimes that the court said they committed? Are you saying that the crimes or the charges that were leveled against them were unfounded?
Mr. Babula Jonathan, I was here on set today. Can you still recall that in 2019 I was arrested and dumped at the Konding Central Prison? They said they charged me of contempt of the President of the Republic, insurrection, rebellion. You could go even up to terrorism. Am I a terrorist? You know that we are in a system that whenever they want to kill someone, they give that person a bad name. You know, they say when they want to kill a dog, they give the dog a bad name. Cameroon is not a democracy, and we should stop fooling ourselves that it's a democracy. If you have a democracy that since 2018, those who are bent on ensuring that elections are free and transparent in this nation are being arrested and dumped in prison, and you still keep on believing that it's a democracy, I want to tell you there's a lie from the pit of hell. Until Professor Alain Foguet and all the militants of the CRM who are in prison are released, and there is a consensual reform of the electoral system, we will not call Cameroon a democracy. We will not call Cameroon a democracy. It is true that the CRM has been saying this, and we still think that a lot has to be done. That's why we have been working in alliance with, in cooperation with other political parties of the opposition, the SDF, the UDC, and you can name the other political parties that are in the platform, to pressurize the system in place for a consensual reform of the electoral system, and then to ensure that Cameroon is a state where there's a rule of law. Because Cameroon is not yet a state where there's a rule of law. Honestly speaking, if you look at a lot of things that are happening, you find that it is in blatant disregard of the law. They trample upon the law in this nation, and that is not a good image.
But the authorities have repeatedly said that Cameroon is a law-abiding country, and that the laws of the nation and even international legal instruments signed and ratified by the country are respected. Now, in the midst of all this, while some like you, especially young politicians and civil society activists like Ndigum Emmanuel, like Fabrice Lena of the PAP and others, are braving threats, illegal arrest, detention, torture, and even death. We remember the case of journalist Martinez Dogo, who was speaking against corruption and was killed. We remember the case of another journalist who is in the far north region of the country, who is now being threatened. He's receiving death threats because he's speaking against corruption and things like that. Why you're braving all these things? A great majority, many young Cameroonians are inactive, passive, silent. What can possibly explain that?
Mr. Babala Jonathan, in a country where so many youths are still being under the captivity of poverty, they barely have what to eat, it is difficult for them to really accept the emotion of, let me say, emotion of fight against injustice. Some of them think that they have to still continue to be loyal to those who are oppressing them, because they are still depending on them for crumbs. You know what it means? The system in place understands that so well, and that is the reason you find that at every time that there is a Cameroonian that stands up and say, this thing is not happening, or this thing is happening, it is wrong, this one is wrong, and that is wrong, they will want to manipulate the youths to tell them that this person is an enemy of the nation, and the youths have been prone like that for over 40 years. You can imagine a human being, a child that has been delivered and then placed to live with the monkeys for 40 years. The child would think that it is the way of the monkey is the way of life. So Cameroonians, right. The Cameroonians have been living injustice over 38 years. The youths themselves, they are looking at the injustice, it is to them normal. So that's why you see that the CRM and other political parties who are working for the common good of this nation are using different mechanisms, trying to sensitize the youth. That's why you see in 2018, a majority of those who adhered to the manifesto of the CRM were the youths. All right. And then we come now to this particular point. If you look at most of the youths, like you quoted me, you quoted a good number of them, are gradually sensitizing the other youth to understand that the youths are the future of the nation.
Need to rise up.
The youths are the future of the nation.
Need to take action.
Yes.
For their rights. Now let's take some few interviews and we'll be right back.
Now you have come and you have come with a lot of grievances against police. Also, yes. Now wait, the president of the Canada Union and other people, they should come tomorrow in my office so that we settle all those problems. Then we make the report to the governor. Governor don't say
The governor has said investigations must be carried out on what really happened.
For that place at the food market.
Go and deposit the corpses in the mortuary.
Now go put the corpse from mortuary.
I think we are insecure because with all those gunshots, you don't know what can happen. We are afraid of all those shooting because of strange bullet. They can meet you at any time. So we are scared. I think the state have to do something about all this to end all this because it scares the people.
Where we are walking is not safe after what happened here the other day. We are confused if we should walk or not. We call on the government to help us because we are not safe.
There's
no drainage there, that place. So we need that basic put drainage here so that when they will do a drainage, then the water will not stand there. So we have a problem there now, right now, because there's no drainage. So the water is coming there and just stand. So there's no way the water could find its way out. So that's the problem. There, that's why we come here. We have to push, and passengers must go down before they enter the car the next side.
I want to assure all the commissioned bike riders that we should work together. The administration has the interest of all bike riders, but for us to have an understanding, we need to collaborate. We don't want you to be angry because we are here to put order.
We don't come here and put order.
They say behind a successful man, there is a strong woman. So behind every successful director or company, there should be a strong secretary. And so this managerial role is principally to help the company succeed by getting proper information and working with the information, giving proper information to your boss. You know, people have their various attitudes and characters. So if you as a secretary, you are not well in your mind, you are not cultured, you are not confident, you are not competent, it will be very difficult for you to manage your boss, your colleagues, and the public.
Some of the complaints is that we don't welcome guests, we don't welcome visitors, or we block them from seeing our bosses, or that maybe when they come to see us, we are doing something else and we don't concentrate on helping them. They think that we are there just to be able to become the boss's second wife or whatsoever. That also, there is no school to find a husband, but we are not there for that. We are there to help and to work, not as girlfriends, not as wives, but as assistants, and we like our job. We are very close to our bosses, but for work to go ahead, not because we want to have anything particular with them.
Between leaving for work very early, closing from work very late, most often after their bosses, are some of the preoccupations secretaries think should be looked into.
Secretaries are like leftovers in the companies. An example, if I'm recruited the same day with an accountant, in 20 years' time, I will remain that same secretary at the same position with the same grade. Meanwhile, the accountant maybe will become the director of finance or even the general manager. But they will not think about making a secretary become a head of department or a director. And sometimes they feel that if the secretary wants to improve in a position, she must leave her job to go and do something else.
Secretaries should be given proper consideration because they have a big role to play in the growth of enterprises. Now, Silvanus Mutaga, we're going to wrap up this edition of The Insight with this issue concerning about 41 board chairpersons of state companies and parastatals who have been operating or working in illegality for several years, and there are 7 of them who may join the train of illegality by July 12, 2023, if nothing is done by he who is in charge of appointing them, that is the head of state. What do you think about this?
Mr. Babula Jonathan, the first thing we need to understand is that the law makes provision that the President of the Republic shall appoint these directors of company, the CEOs, at his own discretion, but then in line with the laws of the Republic of Cameroon. So if the laws of a nation say a director general is not supposed to be is not supposed to be occupying a post for more than 6 years, and the board chair and the President of the Republic is still keeping such a person there, I think that
10 years,
15 years, 25 years, I think that it is really in violation of the law. Now the question is, how then does this affect the life of the nation? That is the question. I want to say that, like I said a while ago, that once there is change of the person at the helm of every institution, you find that new blood comes in, and
new ideas,
new strategies, and all the like, and everybody that comes in will want to leave a legacy, and anybody that comes after that person that was formerly serving will want to prove that he is better than this person, and then you find that it leads to innovation, and then there's going to be a quality of production, and then there's going to be also economic growth and all the like. You understand that? So when we keep a particular family also in place for as long, even beyond the prescribed duration by the law text, you find that we are depriving another family that ought to have been benefiting from that post. And that's one of the reasons that usually cause the youth to be frustrated, because you can imagine that you grew up in a nation, and maybe you enter in a company with all the potentials you have, and you expected that one day you could also reach at this particular post in the office. Because when I talk about those, the CEOs and the director of the company, they are not the only persons. If you go in their ranks, there are also persons that are occupying departmental posts and other like that. They are not being changed. They are there because there has been a recommendation or like, and the youth that just graduated from university with all the talent just came and is kept to be working under somebody for maybe 15, 20 years without any improvement and all like. It is regrettable.
All right, Professor Ondua, Vivian Ondua, has called on all the head of state, notably, to take action and right the wrongs. This is where we are ending this edition of The Insight on Equinoxe Television. Silvanus Mutaga, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you so much for inviting me. Special good evening to Professor Maurice Kamto and the militants of the CRM and all Cameroonians of goodwill that are watching this program.
Thank you for staying with us. Goodbye.
Equinoxe Télévision, au-delà de l'image, nous rendons compte. Ce dimanche,